Melissa, first, I am bracing as someone who's been supportive of what Tesla's doing and optimistic about where this company can go. I was just stunned today. I think that this caught me off guard. I was expecting it basically to be flat. Deliveries is down 9%. And the first question I asked, first order of business, is how bad is it going to get? The panel's done a great job of articulating there's going to be more negativity. I just want to put that in a context, is that going into today, the street was looking for about 15% delivery growth in 2024. If you look at the numbers they just reported and assume that they can grow deliveries 10% sequentially for the rest of the year, deliveries will be down 3% for the year. So this is probably more ugly than it seems even today. And given that change and look what happened in the stock, I don't think that's fully priced in. So I think, Dan, you've been clear about that $100. I don't think we're going to see 100, but I do believe that the stock is going to go lower because this is going to be what I think is going to be kind of the kitchen sink, where you're going to see analysts, I had that job for a long time, throw in the towel and say that this is going to be over for a long time. So I want to start there. Second is the bigger picture. And I think, Tim, you were talking about just, this EV and the EV picture. Just to frame that in, that's a $2.5 trillion market. What's the auto market on a yearly basis? Eventually, of course, it's going to go EV. Panel appropriately talked about what's the timing of that. I think it's going to come faster than most people think, even though this is such an ugly day on the delivery numbers. And the reason is that I believe one of the biggest factors in this horrible number was that there was so much excitement around EVs. People who typically buy a car every 5 years probably moved it forward and bought it 3 years, pulled a lot of demand in. I think eventually that just starts. I'm guilty of being too optimistic, but I think eventually they get to the other side. And one final thought, Dan, you talked about FSD. I agree that that is an important piece here. If anybody's tried FSD, the beta that they just put out last week, it is a step function better than what they've ever done. And so I think that is going to come probably in the next year or two. And I believe that that's going to be another catalyst. So that's where I'm at.
I'm going to make a prediction now, which I think has an extremely likely chance of happening. Sometime in the next 36 months, Tesla stock is going to fall well below the 365-day moving average that I have here, specifically at least 30% below that moving average. Now, if it fell more than 30% below that moving average right now, Tesla stock would be $145 per share. So that to me would not be surprising at all if we dropped that low and substantially lower than that, because in the past, if you look at Tesla's history, that happened multiple times. The question though is, maybe Tesla stock is going to rally, and if Tesla stock, let's say, stays at 250 or 300 for an extended period of time, 30% below that moving average is now going to be $145. It's going to be well above that then. I also personally think if we are somehow going to reach $100, I think $100 is that magical number at which a lot of people will sell their houses, mortgage their property, and buy more Tesla stock, sell other stocks. There are many investors that are not all in Tesla stock investors. I think these investors actually outnumber us all in Tesla stock investors. I think we are in the minority here. And these people have a lot of buying power left. And I have also seen some traders say that, yeah, under $100, I'm getting in. That's a good trade. And I personally, I just buy more Tesla stock from cash flow. I'm not selling my real estate to buy more Tesla stock. So there is a point at which I would say, yeah, I need to sell some of my property and put that money into Tesla stock. My stock portfolio, though, consists only of Tesla stock.
What can they tell us, if anything, in the next quarter or two that can sort of, I don't want to say solve certain issues, but for instance, if they come out with a lower cost model, does that solve for some of the weakness that they will see in China and address that next wave of growth?
So you've got two camps. You've got the people who believe, and the reason why the stock's not down more today is because that camp still exists. The reason why this still has the market cap it does is because that camp still exists. They're not going to be influenced probably by another couple punky quarters. That won't influence it. The people who are skeptical, there's nothing that Tesla's going to say over the next, when they report their quarter on the 23rd, that's going to get those people more optimistic. But as an investor, I think you need to fast forward to, I'm already thinking about mid-2025. And at that point, we're going to have some really easy comps. I mean, this is a down 9%, March of 2025. is we're going to start to get easier comps. I think that starts getting reflected in the stock probably mid to late this year. So that's kind of the time frame. It's going to be rocky for the next several months. I don't think there's much they can say, Melissa.
I disagree with that. If we see, let's say, Ford come out tomorrow saying we are adopting Tesla's FSD software and hardware, do you really not think that Tesla stock will not go up? Just go back to about 9-10 months ago when Ford announced that it's adopting Tesla's charging standard, and then GM, and then many other companies followed. That was extremely bullish, and that in the long term, it will help Tesla stock. It will have some earnings, but it's not going to be like Tesla selling 10 million vehicles per year eventually. I mean, the impact of supercharging deals that Tesla made with these other automakers is not going to be nowhere near as big as that. But licensing FSD software and hardware, there's a lot of money in that. Tesla is already making some money from FSD when people buy a Tesla vehicle. So if these automakers start to license Tesla's technology, earnings would go up basically immediately, maybe not by a lot, but by a little bit, yeah, certainly.
And I want to dig down also just into China specifically, obviously a very competitive market. What do you see ahead there in that market for Tesla?
Yeah, China has been, I would say, of the three regions, US, Europe, versus US and Europe, probably the most challenging from a competitive standpoint. They've actually held, reasonable share within BEVs, call it high single digits, low double digits, depending on the quarter. But what you're seeing is just very intense competition across a variety of automakers, not just BYD, but others as well. I think lately, the competition or the question that's coming up is how do we view the threat from others like Xiaomi that came out with, what appears to be a very compelling offering at a very compelling price point. So you're seeing price pressure in China, you're seeing intense competition. And I think that, region globally is going to be the toughest of the three for Tesla.
At the same time, Dan, it's not like there's no competition here in the U.S., right? So if we looked at some of the gains that we saw for the first quarter for some of the other automakers in the U.S., I mean, Toyota seeing a 20% gain, Honda seeing an almost 12% gain. And of course, now it's not just sort of EV to EV, it's also, gas mileage efficient versus EV. Right. So how do you think that's going to sort of play out this year as well?
Well, you're right. Tesla has said, think of our competition not just as other EVs, but as other, perhaps comparably priced vehicles or other vehicles, in the same segment, in sort of the mid-size sedan or mid-size crossover segment, what would comp against the Model 3 or Model Y. So to the extent that there's going to be, more price normalization, and I would say that's a broader theme within the U.S. sales market, normalization as you've seen some inventory normalization, that's going to be some competition for Tesla. That being said, within the BEV market, within the EV market in Tesla, yes, there is more competition. You are seeing everyone sort of increase the product offerings. But what you're also seeing is maybe relative to the expectations we had going into, say, a year or 2 years ago, the growth pace has slowed, right? And I think what this tells you is that others are struggling with EVs from a cost perspective. They can't keep up with Tesla's pricing. And so in a way, I think this likely reinforces what's going to be healthy market share for Tesla in EVs in the US, where they've had roughly, just under half of the total EV market share. If you look at BEVs, it's just over half. You're going to see some share erosion as more competitive offerings come out, but Tesla can still maintain a very dominant market share in EVs, given an attractively priced offering that others just can't keep up with.
I think Dan there made some good points. Now, some other points I would push against. For example, can we really compare Tesla's market share to other companies when other companies are already selling much cheaper models, as in much smaller models? Tesla only has the Model 3 and the Model Y. So what do you think is going to happen when Tesla comes out with the next generation vehicle, a smaller vehicle, but much cheaper vehicle? Then Tesla is going to start to seriously compete against these other companies. And in China, there are so many of these smaller, cheaper models out there. So that's why Tesla's market share in China is not really relevant. This is a much longer episode than I was planning, but let me know how you liked it. Do you like these longer episodes, or do you prefer shorter episodes? If you prefer shorter episodes, I would simply just done the first 22 minutes and then just didn't do anything else. I wouldn't have really done much different. I would have just made it shorter. Let me know which one you prefer. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.